Okay, this is John with the CEG staff back on again. Let's get the program rolling this morning. I am pleased to introduce you to Larry Treen, Managing Partner of Relay Integrated Logistics and Solutions, to describe Larry's relationship with our organization. The CEG runs a department called the Business Growth Solutions, and they offer consulting and training programs for the companies throughout the capital region. Larry has been partnering with Business Growth Solutions for over a 15-year period, helping companies with leveraging their growth and productivity, and he has a diverse portfolio of services for anyone looking for business improvement. So allow me to get out of the way and let Larry take over. Thanks for being here, Larry.
Hey, thanks, John, and thanks to CEG for allowing us to have this platform. Really tough times. We recognize that for everybody. We appreciate everyone joining today and being a part of this session. Today we're going to try to give you an overall view of what business continuity and disaster planning looks like. We want you to leave here with more of a understanding of how the playbook is formed, how it's put together, how you assemble your team, and the basic building blocks of a plan. By no means are we expecting any of you to become experts coming out of this webinar today, and we certainly want to help you put some of these plans in place if you guys want to go in that direction. So quick discussion points. We got about 45 minutes to talk here. Going to do a little bit of background on Relay, discuss business continuity, like what that really means versus disaster recovery, why we plan, what to plan for, and what does all this look like. Got a partner named Dan Yamin, going to talk a lot about communications and data. Some good discussions will occur there. We're going to have some Q&A. There's about 15 minutes left in the back of this thing. However, listen, if you have questions, there's a chat box feed that John will take and feed them my way and feed them Dan's way. I'd encourage everybody to interact as we go out throughout this. If I just continue to talk for the first 10 minutes, I'm probably going to start wandering and start saying some weird stuff. So engage, interact, shoot questions at us, and we'll take them on as they come towards us. And then finally, we'll wrap up a summary and next steps. A little bit of, I got to move this here, sorry. A little bit of background on myself and more about Relay. Relay is a certified women-owned business in the state of New York. The premise of the business is my wife formed this business, and I've been brought in to continue to help drive it and manage it. The premise of our business is we're former athletes. I like to kind of think maybe I still am a little bit of an athlete, but we're former athletes, and we learned a lot working in team environments, and a lot of times your teammates need help, and we figured in business a lot of times businesses need help, whether it's somewhere on the leg of their journey in their race. We kind of step in and ask for the baton, you hand it to us, and we get you through the finish line and get you to that next leg. So we work all the way from, if you kind of envision an income statement or a P&L in your business, we work from revenue growth all the way down through cost mitigation and activities to help you streamline your operations of your business, and then add accretive P&L performance at the net income or EBITDA level, however you manage your business. So we work throughout the entire income statement to help drive solutions for your business. So John mentioned earlier, we got a pretty diverse portfolio. We try to spread ourselves throughout a business as a generalist point of view. We found that we had a little bit of a weakness with all businesses. I'm always looking at where the weaknesses may sit. We had something that was missing in our business, and I came down to more of the data and communication side of how companies were kind of asking us to help in that realm. So found a great partner out there through a friend, a guy named Dan Yamin. Dan's joining us today. They've been a great partner of Relay at GTE. And having said that, Dan, why don't you go ahead and introduce a little bit about GTE and yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Larry. So as Larry said, Dan Yamin, I was fortunate enough to partner up with Larry a while back. Great partnership. Larry and Relay, his wife, have added a lot of value to what we're doing here in the community. GTE is, if you would consider it, somewhat of a broker, very similar to an insurance broker. We and I'll get into that a little bit later, we represent quite a few, over 100+ vendors throughout the country. I started this up with a couple of other partners because I had started a company called Cornerstone Telephone a while ago, and I exited back in, I'm sorry, there we go. I exited back in 2016, and after that exit, I had recognized through a number of businesses that were contacting me needing help with their communications and their business. We'll call it business continuity. I wasn't calling it business continuity back then, but they were asking for help with their voice data implementation and ongoing support. So I recognized the need there. Larry entered into the equation, and we decided to partner up, take a look at the business opportunities, not just locally, but throughout the country. Our footprint is nationwide. So Larry and I, partnering up with our other partners, are here today. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Larry, thank you for allowing me to participate in this event with you. And I have a couple of slides that Larry will be turning me on to probably 8 or 10 slides into this. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Let's move right along. Yeah, we have a lot to cover. Let me just shrink that down. Okay, a lot to cover in this next call at 30 to 35 minutes here before we go to Q&A. Listen, I'm a data guy. I love data. I think that numbers, they do not lie, obviously if the source is correct. But our objective today is to, like I said earlier, provide a framework around the fundamental building blocks and how you execute this continuity plan. I threw some data up here to kind of look at, and this is a couple years old from the DeWitt Company. What's really kind of interesting here, and I've noticed it a lot, because most of the companies that Relay is working with are small to medium range businesses. We've seen a lot of feedback in the field as it relates to, you know, how do I, my employees are now working from home. How do we communicate? How do we get them to take customers' calls? Like all that stuff that a lot of businesses haven't thought about are really being impacted now. So I grabbed some data here and I want to read them off to you. I think it's kind of important. 75% of small businesses don't have a disaster recovery plan in place. 52% say that it would take at least 3 months to recover from that disaster, right? So can you imagine if your business took 3 months to kind of get back up and going, right? That certainly is would affect a lot of our businesses. It would affect mine very much. 90% of smaller companies fail within a year unless they can resume operations within 5 days of a disaster. We really are going to talk a lot today about how you're going to have this plan, and when you have this plan laid out, like how you go execute that plan. As Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. We got to figure out how to put the plan on paper and then how to execute that plan when, let's say, when the wind starts to blow, right? That's important. 40 to 60% of small businesses never even reopen their doors following a disaster. I mentioned earlier, this is a little bit of dated information. Think about what's going to happen after this pandemic, right? We're seeing on the news this morning of a possible recession now going to start taking place. So the data is going to look a lot different coming out of the COVID-19 situation. So let's get started. Business continuity and preparedness planning. Listen, a lot of people get together every year. They bring in all the smart executives. They sit around the table and they talk about all the great revenue they're going to get and these cool sales plans and this new product that they're going to offer. And they just kind of talk about how they're going to bring in cash to the business. No one's really kind of talking about, well, what happens when everything goes horrible? I like to kind of be the person, I get made fun of a lot for this. I like to be the person that actually sits in a restaurant and I face the door. I like to kind of see things coming at me. It's kind of naturally ingrained in me. I've worked in some pretty hostile environments in foreign countries. I've worked in California, the Midwest, So you've got earthquakes, you've got tornadoes. I've been in the Gulf Coast area. You've got hurricanes. So really some diverse background here on how to take your business plan and to wrap business continuity into it. It's part of your plan, and it needs to be. It needs to include everything that could, any event that could affect your business. Recovery versus continuity. So it's a little bit different, right? So disaster recovery is, I have power. Oh, my power went off. I lost electricity. Oh, now it's back on because I have a generator. This is a little bit different, right? We're going to talk about the things that you probably don't want to talk about in your business, and the things that probably keep you up at night. You're not kind of dropping your guard and kind of bringing it out to the company and getting some mind share involved in some of these ideas and thoughts. So I'm going to break the slides down into some really digestible formats. They're pretty busy, but I'm going to break them down into a summary, then a drop down, and then back into a summary. There's basically 3 pillars of planning, and we're going to walk through this in detail. So, and again, if there's questions, please interrupt me, John, if things start to pop up. Part 1, we want to identify the risks. We want to outline prevention plans to mitigate and eliminate those risks. I mean, for me, continuity planning is all about risk management, and mitigation of those risks. We're going to talk today about how we grade those risks and scale them from, number 1 in the business, like the number 10 in the business, so to say. Business preparation of uncontrollable external and internal risks. Again, this creates collaboration. You're going to need a good mind melt of employees in the business at the table having these discussions with you. Most important, team assembly, how you respond to the emergency, and how you activate the playbook for recovery. That's very, very important things as we move through this. Again, I'll take a little bit of a pause in between each slide in case questions pop up, John. If I can get you guys to kind of focus on the right-hand side of the slide. So it looks like a pie, 5 pieces of it, but they're all separated. However, you'll notice the arrows kind of go in a continuous manner. Continuity is just this, right? You want to have a circular nature as you're always rehearsing and re-looking at these things in your business, right? So the framework, the way that I like to break it down, it's 5 different arenas, right? So you've got prevention, your risk management. You kind of outline the plan, who's responsible for this, who do we call, who are our key contacts, our customers, our vendors, how do we activate maybe call the banks, call our telecommunications partners, those types of things, sort of the basic introduction of the plan. And then preparedness, the impact analysis. This really kind of helps uncover all the things and activities as you start kind of prioritizing them, and it brings the hot ones up top in your list. You can rank and list those details out in a mitigation plan. I'm going to talk to you about that in a couple slides. And examples like sourcing, right? If you really kind of looked at, if you're a product type of business, do you know your sources and where they are located? A lot of sources for some of our customers are in China, right? So you got to put product on a boat or an airplane to get it over here, your raw materials. That creates a little bit of an issue when you're trying to take raw materials and build them into a finished good. And then, how surprised do you really want to be? As I like to say in business, surprise your spouse. Please do not surprise me. I do not like surprises in business. So we try to suspend emotions, suspend beliefs, and we try to put most of the things on the table to have these great discussions. Next one's response, incident planning, reporting. This is really kind of listing out the detailed actions and getting the right folks, making phone calls and reporting correctly. And then you get on your road to recovery here, where you link all your actions and the road to getting your business back up and moving. And then the last part of this is the rehearsing, what makes this whole thing circular in nature. Practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. I played football for 17 years, probably way too long. And practice, 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 practice. You got to know your plan and know how to move and react based upon things that are happening in front of you. Too much thinking sometimes creates a little bit of a mess, and you're not prepared. You've got to overthink things when you don't have a plan in place, and you can't wait for that. A little note on the bottom here: cycle maturity. So there are some companies we're dealing with where they really didn't quite bring the plan up, and they're kind of responding now. They missed the first couple stages here. we can work on that with you. If you want to go backwards in nature, we can kind of pick up anywhere along the cycle and help your business out. So I said earlier, it's kind of broken into 5 key elements. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. So this is the first one. So I'm dropping the blinds here for you and hitting the first one. So the first part of the playbook is really around prevention and readiness. This is your executive summary. This is who we are. This is what our business does. These are the services and products that we render. There's a terms index. You probably want to throw a little bit of a glossary in there. If you have specific acronyms that are only for your business, you might want to define that, right, to keep the communication pattern appropriate. Key contacts, internal and external. Who are your customers? Who are your vendors? These key contacts, you want to have their names, you want to have their email addresses, you want to have their cell phones, you want to have their business lines. You really want to have a robust list of people to go call. And the objectives inside of this first section here really relates to how we tackle our risk management and how we assess risk in our business. And we're going to talk about that on the next couple slides. What are the things that are critical in our business by functional priority, right? If you're delivering a good, a widget to your customers, those are probably the things you want to get your production moving faster, right? Back up and laid out appropriately. You want to lay out immediate response to a critical incident. So if you have an earthquake, you want to know who you call. If you have, a hurricane, how you correctly have a list of people that you identify there. And then formulate and document your strategies and actions to activate, for in the event of a disruption. And again, rehearse, and continue to test, right? And the next slides will kind of bring a little bit more out for you. Again, John, if there's questions, let me know. So listen, this is a busy slide.
I do have one, Larry. I do have one, Larry, which you may be heading to in this slide, but it does says, in the current crisis, what is the first type of risk a business should focus on mitigating or eliminating?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's always different answers for different companies. So let me talk a little bit about this slide, and then most of the things that I'm seeing is really communications to customers and suppliers, right? Customers want to know, where's my stuff? You want to know as a business, where is my stuff? And communication's key to that. And the way around it is making sure that you've got a solid mitigation plan in place to tackle those obstacles. But I'll talk a little bit about this risk matrix here and how each person on this call can go back to the business and bubble those risks up in rank and priority. So focus on the left-hand side. Thanks, John. Focus on the left-hand side here. So this is the preparedness part of the plan. So, also known as risk management planning, right? I see a lot of this stuff in the ISO projects that we do with customers, how to identify the risks to your business and how that whole thing kind of takes place. We want to look at the internal impacts and the external impacts. Internal being, the employees can't come to work. External being, there's a bridge that collapses on the way to work. They can't get to work, as an example. Right? So things you can't control that are external to your business. The mitigation plans and owners listed. So kind of focus a little bit back to the right on the matrix, and I'll walk you through the mitigation plan and how this whole thing kind of lays out. So if you look at the top half of it, you've got an X and Y axis. On the x-axis, you've got likelihood from left to right, rare to certain, and then on the y-axis, you've got consequences, minor and catastrophic. So as you kind of think about all the things that could happen in your business that are likely to shut you down if you have some sort of disruption, you can grade those based upon this framework here. So obviously, this is something that I put an example in place here. So, the risk of a pandemic, global COVID-19 outbreak, the rating is a 25, right? So having a pandemic plan, a health safety plan, telecommuting plan, having that all put in place. I joke a little bit on the slide with some of the names I put, but that wasn't just because, I like these athletes. So you want to have the right people in these positions. people that can work under pressure, people that can deliver under pressure, people who've kind of been there and done that. Again, I said before, you want to have a mind melt of activity of different ideas that come to the table, but the people that go tackle these things in your business need to be the ones that can deliver the ball in game time. That's really, really important. Make sure you've got the right players in the right positions to help your business succeed. So back to the original question, we've seen a lot of questions come to us on IT, cybersecurity, and how they get their employees to communicate to their vendors and their customers. And Dan's going to talk a little bit about this. And as Benjamin Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you are definitely preparing to fail. Last part on this slide here, category assessment. You may not want to use a risk matrix. Some customers use a category 1 being my email, my phones go down, that's category 1. Category 5 is an active nature. A tornado hits, my supply chain, how that works, right? So risk matrix is something I'm familiar with. It lays things out differently for me. It's appealing to the mind. Red means alert. Green means good. Those types of things. Yellow is, get ready for something. And I kind of like the visualization of it. But each of you can have your own ideas. Part 3 of the framework, I'm just doing a quick time check. Okay, we're good. Is the response. So you build up this great plan. You have this, you identify all your risks in your business. You have these awesome owners that can go tackle these risks for you. They can motivate the team and rally the troops. And then, now you've got to respond, right? So you've got this plan in place. Now it's game time. You have to start responding. So, we like to, make checklists of things that need to be activated. We've got a playbook that kind of sits behind this PowerPoint slide. List out your actions. There's some examples I wrote here. If you're a business that works in the community, you need to alert the local news. You want to appoint a spokesperson, right? I cannot emphasize enough to the folks on this call to share with your team. If you're going to communicate, make sure that you have a very well-rehearsed and thought out communication plan. Do not allow folks to make random phone calls. I suggest a script that's written out that you read from. It makes the message and delivery to the field very solid, very concrete, and no one kind of goes astray in the delivery of the message from your business. So these are some examples. Notifying the customers and suppliers. Who did that? Did you do it? What was the action? What's the feedback, right? And again, as Lou Holtz, again, I'm a sports guy. He's a former head coach at Notre Dame. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. So, response is a big part here. You can lay all this stuff out, but you've got to have the right team, the right people, and the right checklists in place to go activate and make those things occur. A little bit of a pause here. John, anything?
No questions right at the moment.
Great. And then, you start working on the recovery part of this. This is really kind of looking at how do we get our business back up and going once a disaster occurs. And again, this pandemic is very new for all of us, right? So reestablishing your business, getting it back up and going. We see things on the news right now where they're going to start gently allowing different business segments to open back up. That's going to be definitely a challenging time for construction businesses or restaurants and stuff like that. So definitely those types of businesses have to start thinking about how they're going to start opening back up and how they get their employees to work, and most of all, create a safe environment for them. So in this part of your plan, you're linking all your actions back to that road of business recovery. This kind of envision like a matrix, like maybe an Excel document, where in the second bullet here it says the plan will include, you have the business activity in, column A, you have the recovery action in column B, and then the next columns are, your resources that you need. Like, we need to have IT involved, we need engineering involved, and then the expected recovery time. We expect to get our production line back up and going in 5 days, right? So make everything under the SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Use that type of approach to really kind of outline your recovery. Like what's the time, what's the activities, and really kind of who owns this type of stuff. And then obviously you want to close it out with the date complete. list out the details, key contact information. I mentioned this earlier. You know, how do you have this great plan and you don't know who to talk to? You're not communicating, whether it's your banks, your lawyers, your accountants, your telecommunication providers, your response team. I'm going to keep emphasizing when this started a few weeks ago, and I just realized, actually, on a side note, last Friday was the week 6. I had been home, right, on you know, kind of lockdown, let's call it. So 6 weeks into this, it definitely has kind of set in. You know, but who's on the team? Who are you going to notify? Like, that type of activity needs to take place. And then, you know, you got to kind of keep building this and keep coming back at it and keep rehearsing it. And, you know, I have another quote down here, you know, we'll continue to work hard and do a better job in every area going forward. I don't know where those little things will come from, but we have to continue, we'll continue to be diligent on them. You know, it's really continuing, and I'm going to keep emphasizing with the team here on the phone, you know, suspend your beliefs, suspend what you think you know about your business, get the right people at the table to really kind of start, you know, let's say talking about the boogeyman. A lot of people don't like to talk about these things, but these are the days and times where you've got to bring these things up. The last part of the framework here, think about that, go back to the beginning slide where there was a pie and it had kind of a circular nature to it. This is that last part that brings all of it back together. We want to learn, improve, and practice off of this. Rehearse, right? You want to think about when you're a kid in elementary school. I've got 2 young kids. There's always some sort of fire drill. Rehearse these things, right? You have you know, weekly, monthly, quarterly business reviews. How is revenue? How is profit? How is hiring? How are our customers current? Where's our pipeline on new customer acquisition? But no one's talking about, you know, what happens if the power goes out? You know, what happens if we all have to work from home? You know, you've got to kind of keep working through these things. One of the things that kind of hit me as I was developing these slides was our business, Relay, is built on continuous change. We want to leave a business better than when we found it. So I share that with you because when you are always changing your business and you're driving improvements, your continuity plan should be looked at. Because what you have in place today, you go drive improvements 3 months from now, that looks different. This is why you just can't kind of let it sit and pile dust on top of it. You've got to brush it open frequently and often when you have your business review meetings, and make sure that your team is rehearsed. And I said earlier, there's this great quote out there that talks about, you know, knowing your playbook. You know, some of the greatest athletes and greatest business minds out there, they know their business, they know their playbook, and they know it so well that when things occur and when lightning strikes, they can make decisions very quickly. And they make those decisions very quickly because they know their playbook, they know their business. They don't have to think. They move and react based upon the things that are being thrown at them. That's a very good position to be in. Engage with your team. You know, a lot of us right now are, you know, working from home, right? I have some clients, their businesses are still going because they're essential. But engage with your team, right? There's some Korn Ferry stuff I was reading after the financial crisis in 2008. You know, roughly 70% of the world's most admired companies told Korn Ferry that employee engagement was higher. People want to be involved. They want to know what's going on. Like I said before, do I have health care? Am I going to get my paycheck this week? You know, I'm a customer. Where's my stuff, right? I have to deliver, you know, your products to my customers, right? So all this is around communication, and it's around rehearsing, making sure you know your playbook. And as the great Bill Shakespeare says, all things are ready if our mind be so. Always, you know, kind of think about that as you approach your business as business leaders. Having said that, I'm gonna shift a little bit over to Dan in the telecommunications arm of our business. If there's any questions, I'll take them now, John, or we can just continue to move on.
I think one quick one you may have touched on it a little bit. It said, can a business develop a business continuity and disaster preparedness plan already in the middle of a crisis?
Yeah, you know, it depends, and it's an interesting one. I think my friend Dan will have maybe a little bit of an opposite view that I have. but it's a good view, and you'll find out when he shares it. You can activate communication plans. You can activate later stage activities. And again, communicating to your employees. How do you communicate to your vendors? How do you notify all those types of people? You can definitely do that. I would not suggest, trying to change, your remote work, where you store your data, right? Your cloud management systems in the middle of these types of things. Dan has a lot of expertise in this arena, but the basic building blocks you certainly can activate in different stages, and I talked about that earlier. I would recommend some of these things take place, and I would highly recommend that some of them don't take place. And Dan, I'm sure you have an opinion on the data side of this. I think you said comments around changing the tire on cars and they're speeding or something like that. So I'll pass the microphone to you now.
Yeah, so great. Thank you, Larry, and thanks everyone. I have 2 slides. I'll be fairly quick with them. And just to add on to what Larry was saying, one of the comments that I had made, because the question came up to us is, can you do something in the middle of such a situation that we're in today, or something similar to this? And the answer is yes, but I said to Larry, it's kind of like changing the tire on a moving car. You have all heard that before. It's not smart, it's dangerous, and somebody's going to get hurt. And that's your business that's going to get hurt. That's your employees that are going to get hurt. So to Larry's point, being prepared and planning, training, testing throughout the years, you will be better prepared for the situation. And, a former athlete that Larry is, I used to be an athlete many years ago. Sad to say, it was many years ago, but the saying was no pain, no gain. You have to do the work in order to be successful. So I'll end it with that. But GTE, let me get back to GTE again. Larry had asked up front, who is GTE? What do you do? Larry and I had talked a little bit about this. GTE is like your third-party control tower. We're going to assist in the planning, the updating, the converting, and supporting of your technology needs and services to meet your operational needs. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, we're a broker for hundreds of communication providers throughout the country. We don't come in and try to put you into one particular vendor because I'm a salesperson for that particular vendor or service provider. We don't do that. We look at the broad spectrum of providers that are out there today, and we know who they are. I've been doing this for 36 years. Every business out there needs communication services. I had a group of 50 sales reps at one time, and every Monday morning I tell them, hey people, don't forget, make sure that you hit every floor and every door out there, because every business has phone, internet, communication services, and they have a great need for that. So we are a broker for hundreds of communication providers throughout the country. We're not tied to one particular. We're going to come in and we're going to recommend a plan to ensure preparedness for business continuity. And the great thing about what we're doing is, as we partner with Larry, GTE does not charge a fee for this. Once again, I liken it to an insurance broker. The vendor provides us our compensation. So whoever we might bring to the table, and just so you know, every vendor provides compensation to us for whoever that might be, whether a local provider, a regional provider, a national provider, voice, data, or internet. They all provide us compensation to provide consultative services to the business community. So this slide here is pretty much showing, how are you set up? And we're going to go through this. We have a 5-phase approach to researching, analyzing, and recommending our services through our organization. So first, here's the intelligent network. How is your business connected to the world? I'm sure you have voice, I'm sure you have data. How is it being delivered? Is this SD-WAN, software-defined wide area network? Is it mobile? Is it Internet of Things? How is it? How are you getting these services, and what services are you utilizing? Collaboration across your workplace. How are you communicating? How does it all work? Do you walk across the room and ask the person in the other office what they're doing? Here's a spreadsheet. Are you emailing it? Are you calling them on the phone? Are you video conferencing? Do you have multi-locations? We go through all of that, and we're going to look at, do you have cloud-type services, UCaaS, Unified Communication as a Service? Are you utilizing an on-premise PBX, a private branch exchange? Do you use Skype? Do you use Zoom? How are you communicating? Then we're going to take a look to see how you're managing all of this. How are you managing your internal and external communication? Do they work together? How is it being provided? Do you have one vendor? Do you have two vendors? What's the budget? What is your capital expenditure on an annual basis? Or what is your operating expense on a monthly basis? And then we're going to help you with the implementation and migration of this new technology or new services that we're coming in to recommend. So next slide, Larry. So we have a 5-phase approach to this. And if you look at this, phase 1 is planning. Of course, you have to plan. And Larry has touched on this. We're going to go through and figure out how should your business utilize the latest technologies and infrastructure that are out there. We're going to take a look at your current conditions of technology. We're going to look at your strengths and weaknesses. We're going to get to know your business operation. How does it operate? We're going to interview your employees. Do you do telesales? Is that something you can do remotely? Or is it in-person sales? Do you have a website? Can you purchase over the website? Are you set up for all of that? We're going to take a look at that. Accounts receivable. How do you receive your checks? Today, somebody's got to go into the office to get those checks, to deposit them into the bank, to add them into your accounts payable and receivable platform, to make sure that you can pay your bills, that you can pay your vendors, and that the cash is still coming in the door. Then we're going to take a look at your physical setting. We're going to look at the building that you're in. You might own it, you might rent it. Regardless, we're going to take a look at the entrance facilities of your communication services into your building. How are they coming in? What if there was a problem of sorts? You know, is your communications provider well equipped to support you? Is it coming in on fiber? Is it coming in on coax? Is it coming in on copper? Is it wireless, as I had mentioned earlier? Where does it go in your building? And you're on the first floor, the second floor, you're in the basement. Think about New York City when they had Hurricane Sandy come to town. There were communication providers in the city that had their switches and infrastructure in the basement of buildings. Those businesses that were fed off of those vendors were out of service for weeks, maybe months. They were not prepared for that. Who would have thought that some vendors had their services in the basement where they were flooded? We need to be prepared for that. Do you have power backup? Do you have batteries? Do you have a generator? So we take a look at all of those things. And after we look at all of that, we do a needs analysis of everything I mentioned above. And then we strategize what the next steps might be. Phase 2, moving quickly. How much time do we have? The design. We're going to design through the evaluation of the vendors. What vendor best meets your business and technology needs? Do they have a service level agreement? What is their escalations of trouble? What type of project management do they provide for you? What type of network do they have? We're looking at one facility today where we are coming in from 2 different vendors with fiber, 2 different entrance facilities, and 2 different locations in that building where that fiber will terminate. It's great planning. In addition to that, the fiber routes back to the provider are not following the same pole attachments. So now we know that if one goes down, it's not going to affect the other. If one part of the building gets hit, if there's a fiber cut, they're set. They're well equipped for some sort of redundancy. I don't want to call it disaster recovery, but it is business continuity. Phase 3, deploy those selected vendors and services that we have recommended. We're going to work with you on it. Some people, some salespeople, and I've had sales reps do this, and I've told them, please, please, please do not say this. They say this is going to be a seamless transition from your current provider to the new provider, because everybody wants to know what type of interruption of services, how is this going to work? We're going to walk you through that. And we know the vendors that do a really, really good job of that, and we know the vendors that will provide the support to make sure that that migration is as seamless as possible. The provisioning of it will be part of the participation in calls and strategizing with the vendor and you. We're going to hold your hand alongside. We're going to hold up your arms for you to say, hey, we're with you. We're a partner. Phase 4 is the management of it. We're going to inspect what we expect. So GTE comes in, we're making a recommendation. We help you with the recommendation and the planning and the installation and the provisioning of it. Now we want to take a look at it and make sure that what plan that we put together from the beginning, are we receiving what we expected? So we're going to inspect what we expect. And we'll get a mark on that. You all will look at us and say, hey, Dan, you had told me this, but this is what's really happening. And we will be accountable to that. We, once again, are your partners. We come alongside you and work with you. We don't recommend, install, and then run away. So we're going to ensure that our solutions are being managed and supported across your business operation. And then phase 5, optimization. We become your partner or trusted advisor with ongoing support by continued evaluation of technologies and cost structures. So as everyone on this call knows, especially now, how important it is to have some sort of being prepared for some sort of business continuity, which includes ongoing documentation. Larry's mentioned this. It includes ongoing evaluation of both your internal and external infrastructures, budgeting and training of your employees. So in closing, GT would like to be your partner along with Relay, Larry, his wife, his associates to help create and manage your business continuity plan. That's it. That's all I have, Larry.
Great, thanks, Dan. Very well done as usual. Let me turn that over. Okay, great. So let me minimize that. So kind of in conclusion, right? So when I started the conversation, it was one slide that had a circle on it, right? And everything was kind of moving in a circular nature. Then I broke down those pieces of the pie throughout different slides to kind of talk with the details. Now really kind of in summary, think about this nice umbrella that kind of sits over top of these, you know, these five pillars, let's say. And that's really, you know, your business continuity and your preparedness planning sitting on top of these activities that are your plan, right? And they're how you activate your plan, from prevention to preparedness to the response, and then the recovery, and how you rehearse these things. Definitely want to continue to kind of make that circular motion move. These things you've got to rehearse. You've got to continue to look at on a periodic basis. I would recommend, typically companies have quarterly business reviews. A quarterly business review can tie in your continuity review. If you have some sort of TL 9000 or you've got some sort of ISO certification, those are typically quarterly as well. Really kind of a good time because you got all the people, all the right minds in the room at the same time to view these types of things. Having said that, I'm gonna open up to some Q&A here, John, a little bit of roundtable, and open a microphone if anybody has anything for us.
Yes, Larry, and I just want to remind the listeners that you can use the Q&A bar at the bottom of the screen. I did have one question myself, actually, and that was for you or Dan, and that was, do you have an example of somebody you did these discussions with a year or two ago, and they have a happy story of a great decision that they made in their preparedness, so that when this current circumstance happened, they're very thankful, that you helped them through that process?
I'll give you my response, and then Dan, I would encourage you to share some of your information as well. So we started actually a transition with a local company, I can't name them, with their data and telecommunications plan. They had a plan that actually had a provider, and that provider had a last mile staging provider. So when the system would go down, there was a problem with the communications. They had to call a person to call a person to call a person, right, to get their infrastructure back up and moving again. Since then, we've actually it's over a period of time, right? It takes weeks and months to do these types of activities. We've transitioned this business over to a new provider with no last mile intervention. So when they pick up the phone, they're talking to the provider. They're talking directly to the person or people that give them the answers that they need. So again, allowing, and I'm speaking a little bit for Dan here, but on the communication side, you really want to be speaking to the company that's making the decision and pushing the buttons for you. You don't want to talk to the person that's talking to the person that talks to the person when your building has a shutdown of information. Dan, any comments from your side?
Yeah, that's a great point, Larry. I had a medical facility. They weren't very large, but they had a lot of incoming calls. They had fiber coming into their building, and they had another service provider for their phones. It was cloud. Their fiber, for whatever reason, went down. They had contacted me and asked me, "Hey, Dan, can you help us out here?" I said, "Well, who's your provider? How?" He gave me all the information. It was after they were down for a day, and they did not have any business continuity. They had no backup. So I made one call directly to the provider, as Larry's talking about. You want to go right to the provider. They sent an engineer out on it immediately. It was fixed within 2 hours. I went back into this business. I brought in a different fiber provider. I provided them backup with a totally different vendor. So now you had a fiber provider and another vendor in there. I put in different cloud handsets, UCaaS, Unified Communication as a Service, and I saved them about 30% over their current invoice. So they're very grateful today, being positioned. They have redundancy, they have backup, they have better. And by the way, the fiber that we put in, the internet going out over that, the bandwidth was more than doubled, and they saved money on it. So those are the types of things we could look at because of being around for such a long time, having so many contacts, partnering with Larry and his group, and the relationships that we've established together. So it's good planning, good opportunity. I could probably go on and on and on about those opportunities that I've come across over the past 35 years.
Yeah, and maybe 30 more seconds, thanks, Dan, and maybe 30 more seconds from my side. So I talked a little bit about, what Relay really does. But, we work in a manner of putting best practices in place and documenting how your business works from the sales end to the operational end. A really good example, John, to kind of piggyback on the question, we recently in the past, let's call it 18 months, had gone in and put together in the sales organization of a local business, What are they talking about? What are their value propositions when they call a customer? What are the services they're selling? A really good specific call plan. And this is a business that actually doesn't call on customers face to face. They pick up the phone and call customers, right? So they dial for dollars, sort of say. We put in a structure where this team could deliver a message to the clients in any way whatsoever that allowed them to be consistent in message and consistent in delivery. That company called me when this first started happening, and basically their whole offices went remote, and they were able to actually continue these call activities and look at call metrics. We have a system that allows them to dial in from their phones that connects into the business, that logs the data on how many calls a sales rep is making. So we built a structure that enabled an environment to be measured and monitored and controlled. And when you do those types of things, you can scale quickly, and your redundancy is more in place. So another quick example, and I see we have another question here, John, pop up.
Yes, we had a question about are you serving a variety of industries? And the second part is, are you able to support small businesses, startups, and those that might have limited revenue at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the slide here, that's an awesome question. So I'm glad somebody asked that. So on the slide here, we talk about the different industries and this is kind of a relay perspective, but I know GTE very well enough to know that it's going to be the same look. So we're serving multiple industries. We're working with companies that just design software. We work with a local robotics manufacturer that physically builds robots, right? We've gone through photonics, telecommunications. We work with a really, really awesome local janitorial business that does janitorial services for like clean room environments, right? For like a Regeneron or like a Global Foundries. So the answer is yes to the first part. And then for the second part, we really enjoy kind of working in the arenas of the small to medium range businesses. And the reason why is it's easier to navigate. From my perspective, Dan may have a different one because he can work at any environment. It's pretty simple, right, from the telco side. We like to be able to kind of work directly with the decision makers, and typically that's the small to medium range businesses. And they're more, you can navigate those businesses a little bit more easily. So the answer is, yes to the second part as well. There's, really kind of no one too big or too small. And we like to, we partner a lot. So to answer the question directly, we partner a lot with CEG to help those local companies who may need funding to offset some of these costs. So on the next slide here, we'll have a little bit of our information here to share when I come back to it. But the answer is yes to small businesses, and we try to partner with the Center of Economic Growth to help spur funding to help those companies as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that quickly is I work closely with the owners, managers of the Biz Lab over in Schenectady, and I work closely with the owners and managers of Center of Gravity in Troy, which are always trying to facilitate new businesses, new startups, and there's growth opportunities there. So yeah, we work closely with small startups, small businesses. Really doesn't matter the size. If we can help them out, we want to be part of that, because quite honestly, you never know where they're going to go in the future. As they grow, we grow with them.
That's right.
Very good. Very nice closing comment, Dan. I want to tell everyone that this session was recorded and will be up on the CEG website shortly. If you want to share it with your business associates and staff, you have Larry and Dan's contact information on the screen, and you can also contact our Business Growth Solutions department at CEG if you ever want help or conversation about consulting areas and training areas. We're here to serve the business community. We owe a hearty thank you to Larry and Dan for their time and their information this morning. So thanks very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. It was great, and really appreciate, as I said earlier, everyone joining and listening to us. And, any bit we can be helping, please reach out, and you have our information on the screen here. And thanks so much to CEG for giving us this opportunity.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Be well. Be safe.